Hello, welcome to Cherry Bekaert's Government Contractors Podcast, where we discuss current government contracting trends, compliance matters, and best practices to guide federal contractors forward. My name is Jonathan Reid. I'm a director in our government contract finance and accounting outsourcing service line. And with me today is Michael Cippel, managing director in our FAO service line. And today, we are talking about the differences between three very important positions: the accounting manager, controller, and CFO. Mike, thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here, John. I think we've got a subject that people are going to be really excited to learn a little bit more about. So why don't we kind of jump into it and
Yeah,
go from
absolutely.
there?
Completely agree. These positions are all involved in the accounting and finance department of a business. So I think my first kind of question to you is, how do you go about obtaining one of these positions? What are the educational and experience requirements, and what type of skills do you really need for one of these positions?
That's a good question, John. A really good question, and something I'm sure that people can think about as they map their career. So usually to become an accounting manager or controller, you typically need a bachelor's degree in accounting, finance, or a related field. And having a master's degree can be beneficial for higher positions, but it's not always required. Um, Obviously, you want to look into continuing your education even after that point, for certifications that are often seen, such as a CPA license, or a CFA, a Certified Financial Analyst license, which allows the CFA, which allows analysts to guide clients in investment decisions. They're not mandatory certifications, but they do offer growth opportunities and more experience. But overall, a blend of your education and certification along with experience. So the experience comes obviously starting in a role that's a staff accountant or senior accountant, and working your way up. Attention to detail, good Excel skills, accuracy, all very important to excel in the field. Um, Both accounting managers and controllers tend to have similar backgrounds, but the jobs and duties differ a little bit, which we'll get into. The CFO tends to be less of a technical role. It's not the down and dirty that you often see. The education obviously is important, but not as leaned on. It's more the expertise and experience that comes with 15 to 20 years of experience in like situations and like jobs. It's a very high profile role that a lot of times leans on reputation. Um, the CFO may also have an MBA, CPA, CFA, or a CFM, which is Certified Financial Manager.
Yeah,
So a little bit different on each.
yeah, I completely agree. I think that maybe a misconception that a lot of people have is that you need, the strongest math skills out there to be, considered for any sort of finance and accounting position. And while I don't necessarily disagree with that, I think that the major skill set is, what do you do with those numbers that you generate? You need to have strong, you know, ability to see the logic and have those analytical skills. So it's one thing to be able to generate those numbers, but what are you really doing with those numbers? What insights can we gain from those numbers? So I think that, like I said, while math is an important skill to have, it's really that ability to analyze the data and come up with good decisions based off of that data.
And
Um,
and that's a really good point, John, because when you're an accounting manager, so if you really want to talk about an accounting manager versus a controller before we get to the CFO role, the accounting manager is responsible for the day to day. And there is not only the accuracy of making sure that that's correct, but also the numbers that are put together. You want to make the way that you ensure that they're correct is you look for trends, that you analyze the data, because
right.
ultimately down the road, people are going to be making decisions based on that data.
Yeah, completely agree. So one question I have before we get into some of the major differences in these key roles is do all businesses have all three of these positions?
That is a great question. It's I'm going to say it depends, and basically what it depends on is depends on the size of the company.
Yeah.
We here at Cherry Bekaert work with clients of all sizes, and if it's a smaller company, you're likely to have only one or two key positions filled. You may, if it's small enough, you may have one person kind of taking on all the roles, or somebody that's the CEO or partner might be doing the CFO role. So if it's a smaller company, you're likely to have maybe an accounting manager, maybe a controller, depending on the needs of the business. When you get to the larger companies, oftentimes you're going to have the accounting manager, then the controller, and you're also going to have a CFO. So again, the size of company and also needs of the business, because people can be expensive, and you want to make sure that you're allocating roles correctly.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you really hit the nail on the head there. Giving the typical accountant's answer is that it really depends. And what it depends on is really the needs of the businesses. All right, so let's kind of focus in on some of the differences. So when I say accounting manager, Mike, what do you think would be a good list of just the overall duties for an accounting manager? I think that you had mentioned earlier that it's really managing the day to day. So focusing in on maybe cash transactions, getting an accurate cash report, and managing maybe a staff and senior accountant when it comes to sending out customer invoices, entering vendor invoices. What do you think about when I say accounting manager?
Yeah, I tend to think about managing the team that does the daily financial tasks.
Yeah,
So, invoices have to go out, vendors have to be paid, payroll's got to happen, and everything's got to be put into the general ledger in the responsible way that records are accurate and the reports that are prepared are correct. Um, and again, analyzing the financial data to make sure that it makes sense, that you're not missing something, which is it's easy to do when you have a lot of transactions to not include, I don't know, some kind of benefit payment, or something else that should be included in there, and also not to pay something more than once.
yeah,
So there is that attention to detail. And while it's not so much that you have to have or not have good math skills, you have to like numbers. You have to be able to look at the numbers and and listen to them, to what they're trying to tell you.
yeah, I completely agree. While it seems like, the major focus of an accounting manager is transactional related, I do also agree that you need to be able to read between the lines and really figure out what those transactions mean to your general ledger, to your reports, and what the needs of the business are. So we've talked a lot about the transactional data and what goes into an accounting department. Does the accounting manager have a role in any of the planning and strategy, anything related to tax and audit?
They might, um, in a lot of situations, they'll be involved in planning and strategy more at a lower level, more at a tactical level. We're not talking like necessarily long term, but they also will be involved in um, supporting tax and audit, because oftentimes those things are outsourced to other companies. Tax and audit are specialties, and they will support those inquiries and the necessary data pulls and reports and analysis that those consultants will need.
Yeah, completely agreed. And I think that that's a good segue really to the role of a controller. So when I hear controller, I typically think of a term like a financial guardian for the company. I usually start to think a little bit more about the person who's in control of coming up with repeatable procedures and managing internal controls for the accounting manager so that those transactions are processed in a way that are, number one, auditable, but also, like I said, maintain kind of a high level standard around those internal controls. What do you think
That,
about when you're
that
working?
that's exactly it, John. I think you hit it on the head, and I think the word that would kind of sum up a lot of that, besides being overall responsible for the accounting team, is overall compliance. So you mentioned internal control. Very, very important to have good solid internal controls in case anybody's auditing the books, or in case there ever needs to be due diligence done in case of a sale or anything along those lines. So you mentioned the financial guardian. It's overseeing accounting. It's also creating reports and managing investments, and overall looking at and handling risks, whether they're perceived or they're possible risks
Yeah.
that could be coming. So the overall compliance of the thing, making sure rules and procedures are followed and the books are in compliance with GAAP, and if there should be some other things such as not-for-profit circulars or in the government space, the FAR requirements, that those are being monitored and followed.
Yeah, completely agree. When I hear controller, I also think a little bit more about, strategy, planning, maintaining a budget, meeting different metrics. So controller, I think, can be involved in some of the planning for metrics, but really just making sure that the accounting manager is sticking to tasks so that they get those financial reports to monitor those metrics. So I want to move on to the big fish, the CFO. I think that it's, absolutely a vital position to the company. Like we mentioned earlier, in smaller organizations, typically a CEO will kind of act as a CFO as well. But if you were to define the role of a CFO, where would you start, Mike?
I think if you wanted to boil it down just to a couple of words, it's this: the person is the strategic financial leader of the organization. They're collaborating with executives and investors and the finance team to manage risk, choose investments, and collaborate on strategic decisions.
Yeah, agreed. I think that a lot of what a CFO does is really maintaining those relationships, like you said, with different executives, also investors, just really key and influential points in the business. I think that a CFO is really responsible for having that kind of oversight, and also taking a look at the big picture. So they're responsible for the financial health of the organization, and it's always their job to kind of look into the future to see where the business is heading and what decisions need to be made now in order to put themselves in a position for success later on.
Exactly, exactly. And some of that is, looking at capital strategy, looking at MDA decisions,
Yeah.
interpreting the forecasts for investors and other executives. So that high level strategic thinker that can talk to not only C-suite executives but also others outside the company, that you may need to talk to for investments and mergers and other items.
Yeah.
So much broader, larger skill set needed for that position.
Yeah, agreed. And, typically a CFO comes with years of experience, and along with that comes relationships that they bring along with them so that making those decisions are, a little bit easier. I think in conclusion, all three roles, number one, they require that strong educational background, which sometimes comes with experience in order to support the accounting department. Do you have any final thoughts, Mike?
I don't, other than to say that whether you're a small company or small, medium, or large size company, obviously there's no one size fits all on the positions that you need, but all of them play crucial roles in managing a company's finances. Whether you're you're doing it with one person or three people, um, without the proper oversight and guidance, the accounting, you need to make sure the accounting is done correctly, properly, on time, and that somebody is using that data, looking forward to help guide the company forward. And for those people that are thinking about careers as accounting managers and controllers and CFOs, once you put in the time and you get the experience, the right candidate will find that they're able to progress through their career up through accounting manager, controller, and even to the CFO level.
Yeah, completely agreed. All right. Well, that is all the time we have today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Mike Cippel or myself, Jonathan Reid. We thank everyone for tuning in and listening, and please make sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.